Center of the World Festival, a 501c3 nonprofit, is the licensee of the KCPK LP-FM radio station. This video briefly describes how to create a podcast for KCPK Radio. This is part 1. There are many ways in which a podcaster can promote their own business. The access to KCPK radio broadcasting is only one of those ways. KCPK does not take the place of your other business prospects. KCPK is in addition to your other business endeavors, not in place of your other opportunities. To understand how KCPK may assist your business marketing, view videos at www.calfest.org and tab Training Videos and videos titled Podcaster Opportunities and Non-IBC Contracts. The video you are now watching is focused on the first-time podcaster who does not yet have an established business. KCPK is their first choice for a platform for their broadcast. You may plan to develop your other business podcasting platforms later. See these resources on the Independent Broadcast Coalition webpage. Go to Section 4 and click on Podcasting Resources for a list of platforms. An application for membership into the Independent Broadcast Coalition may be a part of your plans. To consider that, watch the training video entitled Independent Broadcast Coalition Contracts. In Part 1 of Create a Podcast, we will discuss legal considerations, required release forms, how to describe your idea, how to script a show, legal considerations. There are 2 important documents to read to understand what type of podcast you can create that can be broadcast on an FCC-licensed radio station. Go to www.calfest.org and click on the menu tab, Independent Broadcast Coalition. Scroll down to Section 3 and click on FCC Rules. Read the chapter on broadcast programming, basic law and policy. Read the chapter on broadcast programming, law and policy on specific kinds of programming. Read the chapter on business practices and advertising. Next, go to Section 4 and click on Podcasting Legal Guide. Read this entire manual. When your podcast is submitted to KCPK, it will be reviewed to ensure that it conforms to all these rules. Required release forms. There are certain signed forms which are required to be submitted with your podcast. On the website www.calfest.org, in the menu tab Independent Broadcast Coalition, scroll down to Section 4, Podcast Producers. Click on item Checklist for 10-episode podcast submission. On the downloaded document, click on each hyperlink, read each document, and submit those which apply to your podcast. The broadcast release agreement is always required. The other forms pertain to the talent or other material you use in your podcast. Please review the Podcasting Legal Guide to determine which forms you will need to get signed by your podcast collaborators to submit along with your podcast. If you only want to submit one podcast, please contact an IBC member to become part of their specific podcast series. Do not submit directly to KCPK. If you would like to be connected to an IBC member, go to the membership website www.kcpklp.org. How to describe your idea. KCPK requires that you submit a written summary of your podcast series. Under Section 4, click on the item Podcast Submission Questions. We want to know about your idea, your target audience, and the format of your podcast, such as, is it a solo show or co-hosted? Is it an interview or roundtable discussion? Or an educational documentary? Or an art form, such as a play, a reading, a Creative Commons musical production? How to script a show. If you want to follow a more structured and conventional format, please click on the template for podcast script under Section 4. KCPK does not require a specific script to be followed. Originality and creativity can develop a new audience following. In Part 1 of Create a Podcast, we discussed legal considerations, required release forms, how to describe your idea, How to script a show. View Part 2 for KCPK technical requirements, how to record and edit your podcast, locate an underwriter.